Welcome back, Mighty Vandals, to Tubs at the Club, the Idaho Vandals affiliate on the Big Sky Podcast Network. We are brought to you today by Snake River Stampede Whiskey, but we'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the show. I am your host, Dallas Hammer, joined as always by brave, bold Brian Marceau.
Well, look, because Idaho's off this week, obviously I had to rock my Northern Colorado colors. So glad to be here. See Marten, at least on camera, looks like he chose to match. Yes, that was coordination, guys. Good to be here, man. Good to talk bye-week stuff because I think we got a lot to talk about.
As Brian buried the lead there a little bit, the man in Moscow himself in a floating head today, Marten Heemstra, the man in Moscow. Producer Redacted, how are we doing today?
Going good. I decided to switch things up. So wearing an Idaho hat. I'm wearing my Savannah Bananas hat and my jersey of the game I am maybe going to this weekend.
For those who can't see it, Marten is wearing a camouflage Portland State top 5 Vikings jersey. We're going to be previewing the Tubs at the Club game of the week, Portland State versus Eastern Washington. Throughout this entire show, guys, I know I let in saying this was going to be Vandals bye week. It's not. Surprise, Grandpa Brian. This is entirely Portland State, Eastern Washington.
We are replacing the Eagle Power. You're replacing the Eagle Power Hour. Let's go.
My thoughts are I wouldn't want to talk anything else. Why, when we could have a number 12 versus number 10 or 11 matchup in the Big Sky, my next hour is clear.
Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, this is the bye-week preview for the Idaho Vandals. Maybe recap is a better word for it. Idaho 2-3 on the season, 2 straight losses. Started the season off at Washington State on the road, lost 13-10. Then home against St. Thomas the next week, 37-30 victory. Home against Utah Tech the next week, win 20-6 before the last 2 weeks going on the road to San Jose State. FBS San Jose State losing 31-28. And then last weekend, the unfortunate Big Sky After Dark loss in Missoula, 41-30. Brian, I'm going to let you take the wheel here and just tell me where you want to go. We got a lot of things to talk about today.
I mean, we purposely chose to not talk like our broad takeaways from the Montana game because we knew we had this coming up. And we are like the only show in the podcast world that goes live essentially the moment we can after a game, which at 11:30 p.m. Not always the best time to try to say like, hey, this is how I actually feel about stuff. So I think we need to talk about the Montana game, not to relitigate the game, but I do think that was a pretty good barometer of where Idaho is. I think it's a barometer of what Idaho could be, but what Idaho is not yet at. So I guess, Dallas, the first thing I'm going to say is, as a subtext for this conversation, Idaho has the most favorable 4-week run it's going to have the entire year. We have this week off. We have Northern Colorado at home. Then we've got Eastern at Eastern, and we get to host top 5 Portland State. So the month of October, it culminates in another big ESPN2 night game on Halloween at Northern Arizona, an NAU team that looks formidable right now, but will be playing Idaho after back-to-back Montana State, UC Davis. So by the end of Halloween, how we feel about some of these teams around Idaho's level can radically change because Idaho, to me, look, they've had a pretty rough schedule run, so they're due for a month to, let's say, regroup. So the first thing I'm going to say before we have any sort of takeaway is sometimes the scheduling gods do you a favor. Whatever you want to bitch about the first 5 weeks, I don't think any team has a better next month to get themselves reestablished than Idaho. So point one. Mm-hmm. Point two, this is an area where I think there's some parts where you and I are probably going to diverge in what we diagnose from that game. My big picture diagnosis from that game is, in spite of Idaho doing a lot of things wrong for a lot of that game, the Vandals were down 9 with 13 minutes left. So, AKA, the Grizz got Idaho's worst shot. The Grizz helped make Idaho's worst shots show up. But Idaho gave its worst shot for 75-80% of that game. And with 13 minutes left, it was still a winnable ball game. I'm saying that because, hey, if you were a person who on Saturday night thought the sky was falling, I truly think you should pay as much attention to that fact as the fact that Montana did dominate 80% of that game. So I just bring that up to say I don't think the sky is falling. I think this is a good team, but I think this is a team that has far less margin for error now, which does scare people. Okay, that's fine. But I think there's a couple things Idaho has to figure out offensive and defensively. And what I'm going to say offensively, because we can acknowledge this, Idaho has some things they do well, but as a whole, the Vandals are not scoring that well on the season. Even that Montana game, getting their ass kicked for 80% of the game, that was their second highest scoring output of the entire season. And the thing I'm going to point to that I hope Idaho does differently is because of the health of the running back room, because we have no idea when we're going to have someone other than Nate Thomas be the go-to back. And we know Nate Thomas is, I use the term pitch count, but we know he's not a guy we want carrying it 20, 25 times. And even in that game, Carlos Matheny got like 2 touches. That's telling you Coach Thomas Ford does not have a ton of confidence in the guys below Nate Thomas. I think with the health of the running back room, I really hope Idaho reassesses a little bit of that run to pass ratio and looks a little bit more like some old school Eastern teams, not passing the ball 1,000 times, but moving closer to 50-50, where they're still going to try to run the ball. Because that orientation for Thomas Ford is not going to go away, and keeping the other team off the field helps it when you have a secondary you're not super confident in. But when Idaho scored points in bunches, man, it was the Joshua Wood show against Montana. And it was not Joshua Wood standing in the pocket throwing deep passes to the sideline. It was essentially Joshua Wood doing a Giovanni McCoy impression. I don't want to see that every play, but I would like to see that a little bit more than we're seeing right now. Or maybe, hey, every single deep sideline pass, I would much rather have Joshua Wood looking at his first 2 reads and then making something happen instead of relying on the passes to the sideline. I say that because I think these Vandals need to find they need to find ways to score a few more points easily. And that can also be getting into tempo. But I think the guy who's going to drive Idaho to score in a few more points is Joshua Wood. This isn't like, I don't think Idaho needs to completely retool, but I think at least a bigger part of the game plan should be, how do we get Joshua Wood to get easier looks? He's passing about 75% on the deep balls when the guys are coming back to him when he extends the play. Like he hits those at a very reliable rate. Mm-hmm. That's part of how Idaho can score some easy points. That to me is how you can make up for a secondary that is probably going to struggle against a team like UC Davis, against a team like NAU, just like they've struggled 4 out of 5 games this year. So I guess that's my phase 1. Is my takeaway was, I don't think anyone should think the Idaho's offense is broken, but I think you should look at that late third, entire fourth quarter of Montana as, I think that a little more of that aggression is what Idaho needs to try to score. I think they should template. They need, against better teams, they need to try to score about 35 points. And the way they've been playing, I think it looks like a team that believes if they score 24, they're going to win. I've just seen enough of the secondary against teams that can pass the ball that I think that's where you retool and buy yourself some margin for error. Dallas, I'm going to let you jump in. You've been on the shelf for a while, but that was my first big takeaway is things are not broken, but I think, you're sitting at 2-3 with, if you're good, you eventually have to beat some of these good teams. Idaho's 0-3 against the good teams on schedule. I think you got to relook at something if that's the case. And what I just went over about, hey, get Wood some easier looks, that's what I hope to see.
Mm-hmm. I'm mostly in agreement with that, Brian. I don't know if I'm necessarily as much of the you got to swing away from the run game as I am. You got to pass the ball smartly and not just pass it to pass it, which is kind of what it felt like was going on there in Montana. No,
can I have you actually clarify that really quick? Like, pretend I'm an idiot because I think I know what you mean. But when you say you thought Idaho's kind of passing it, like, can you spell that out a little bit?
Yeah. So I think that this team's identity, even with Eli out, with Art Williams out, I think this team is a 4-down team, and you have got to be in moving the ball in small chunks every single play. If that means you're going to be going for it on 4th and 3, 4th and 2, just frequently, I think that's the strength of this team is keeping the ball moving. Nate Thomas, yes, we know he's dinged up. Nate Thomas is typically good for a couple yards. Kinchlow is typically good for a couple yards. Carlos Matheny only got a couple carries, but was at least a big enough body to fall forward. You're not obviously going to win a bunch of games by just running the ball 2.5 yards a carry every 4 plays and just, okay, and you set it down, it's 2.5 yards, 2.5. That's not going to work. However, going back to that Montana game, Brian, for me, Idaho ran the ball twice, 4 throws, 2 3-and-outs. Third possession comes around, and Idaho finally commits to the run. Idaho does not panic when Nate Thomas only gets a couple yards. They kept going at it. They got a first down. Then they got another first down. That's after that point. Then they sprinkle in a pass, get up another first down. They go into the second quarter, and that's still a very close game. Immediately out of the second quarter, it's deep ball to Emerson Cortez Menjivar in the end zone. Does not work. And then now, unfortunately, this is where I don't know if Joshua Wood is holding the ball too tight. I don't know what the issue is mechanically, or if it's just a depth perception issue. I don't know. The guy misses every throw deep. It's almost never underthrown. It's almost always over the guy's head. Not the worst problem to have, but when you're against Montana and you can't make a bunch of mistakes, that's what ends up happening. So then,
and pause real quick to clarify. You mean when he misses his deep throws, he is persistently missing his deep balls?
Oh, he's missing even his short throws the same way, Brian. This is not just a deep ball thing. This is even short throws. I went back and in preparation for this bye week, guys, I went back and watched the tape from St. Thomas. Went back and watched the tape from Utah Tech. I only made it through the first half of Montana. Just again, I unfortunately have a job, but that even was a thing in St. Thomas and Utah Tech where he's sending it over Jake Cox's head 6 yards from the line of scrimmage. The touch is just not quite there, which makes it really hard to have a passing offense when the guy doesn't have a bunch of touch. Captain 58 in the comment section throwing this out there. If we trust Kinch on 4th and 1 and we're hurting for running backs, can't we give him the ball on 1st and 10? That's exactly what I'm getting at, Captain. Is I understand there's not a whole lot of faith behind Nate Thomas, but the identity of this team is run the damn football. And if you don't run the damn football, things aren't going to go super well. Idaho, again, going back to that second quarter in Missoula, Idaho then gets down to 3rd down. It's 3rd and 6. They go into max protect and try to throw the ball. There are 7 guys blocking, and the 8th is Nate Thomas kind of blocking, kind of can't decide if he's going to end up being an outlet or if he's going to stay in and block. And Montana has it pretty well covered because it's deep routes down the field. And that's what then continued to happen throughout most of that second quarter. And what happens is Idaho pisses that away, had a good drive going, throws the ball too much, kicks the field goal, do a great job defensively, stop Montana after 4 plays, and then Wood immediately misreads the read option and shoots that drive right in the head. And Thomas, it's like 2nd and 15. Thomas gets hit in the backfield because Montana knows it's 2nd and 15. What the hell are you going to do? And it's 2nd and 15 inside your own 15. It was just, it completely fell apart there. Montana forces some bad looks. They get the ball back. They go no huddle. They drive down the field very quickly. And then at that point, it's ears pinned back and go. And that's where the issue for me is if Idaho would have committed to just continuing to run that ball, okay, the worst case scenario, you don't convert that on 4th down and you're giving them the ball on the 30. Yes, that sucks. It's not something you want to do. But we watched throughout that game as field position continued to be an issue. And we've seen throughout this year, the kicking game is not going to win you anything. You better be kicking as an absolute last resort. And that's what it didn't feel like to start that Montana game. For me, Brian, I look back at those first 2 quarters and think, man, Idaho left a lot on the bone there. And that sucks. It really, really, really sucks. Ron Lowney, the game plan fell apart early. It did. And I understand that has a lot to do with your top 2 running backs being out. But man, there are subtle changes that have to happen here to make this work. Again, we're talking about a team that's lost to an FBS school by 3, an FBS school by 3. And unfortunately, the best team that they're going to see all year by 11. I hate to say that, but Montana is far and away the best team that they've played this year and will see this year. So
there's one thing I want to mix in this is why I am more on the dial. I really just think getting Joshua Wood easier looks is the key. Is Idaho's running stats are buttressed quite a bit by what Joshua Wood does. Now, of course, lots of those are scrambles, but like he's the home run threat on the ground. If you remove Joshua Wood from the equation, Idaho running backs are at the 4th worst in conference in yards per rush. If you take out Joshua Wood, the running backs as a whole are rushing for 3.6 yards per game. Now they haven't run for, I think they've run for 3 total touchdowns too. Now that's not exactly fair because Joshua Wood also punches in touchdowns that, some of the short yardage ones, if this was a Jack Lane team, most certainly Art Williams would probably have an extra touchdown or 2. So I'm not going to fixate on that part, but the part I'm going to fixate on is, so I feel good about Idaho's offensive line, but even with our better guys, Art Williams was solid. He's not a first, second team all league dude. And he looks like he's the best one, but Art Williams is out until he's in Dallas. And like, he certainly wasn't in for the Montana game. Mm-hmm. I have no idea if we have any prayer at all of seeing him again. And because Eli has been dinged up pretty much since week 1, right? Like
I'd say pretty much his whole career.
Yeah, but this year it's been much more exacerbated than previously. Mm-hmm. He also wasn't the feature back other years. But we're down to a not healthy Eli. We're down to if he's healthy or not. We've already covered the Nate Thomas situation. Mm-hmm. I like Hinch, but he's short yardage. I don't know if he's rushed more than 2 yards at a single time the entire year. Now, of course, when he's in there, everyone knows he's going to rush, but he does what he's been effective the way he needs to. But, that's situationally. But I look at that overall production, and I just don't see that as the recipe to buying Idaho some margin for error against the better teams. And that's where I'm stressing is the margin for error I want for Idaho is, hey, one, Idaho needs to not lose games they should not. For example, St. Thomas by 7. I know they won that game. But I don't want Northern Colorado to be 21-17 with 3 minutes left in the 4th quarter. I don't want Eastern to be 30-27. Eastern's got the ball last drive of the game. Like that's how I want Idaho to actually blow some of the lower teams away. But then with teams like NAU, I just think the Vandals got to score more. And I don't see how this group right now, in spite of the O-line, which we haven't really talked about much, and the reason we haven't talked about them is because they haven't been a problem this year at all. So, congrats those guys. Not trying to write that off. I think the fact of Idaho having a good O-line that both can pass block and run block, and they've also done a pretty damn good job of protecting Joshua Wood when he extends plays without getting holds. That's a huge deal. But I think you have that. You have Wood versatile as he is, but that's where to me, that's why I'm ringing in there hey, I saw that in the 4th quarter. I saw him make some big plays against other teams. I don't understand how this running back room is the key right now, but maybe you can square the circle for me.
So my biggest concern, Brian, with going out and saying, yeah, the offense just has to score more points. Well, the problem with that is that puts the defense on the field more. And that's what I don't want to see. I don't think we've seen enough out of this defense, especially with the injuries that are coming through. I don't necessarily love the idea of Idaho trying to win the first race to 30, because right now the recipe for, hey, we're going to put the defense on the field maybe 20 minutes, that's been working pretty well. You go back to St. Thomas. Yes, I know that game should have not been as close as it was, but the penalty situation there was absurd, and that has improved. The coaching week in and week out has gotten better in fixing a lot of the issues we had at the start of the year with this team. But I'm not yet confident enough to say, yeah, hey, this defense is going to hold everybody to 25 or 28. And as long as the offense gets up to 30, we're going to be fine. I don't know if that's the truth. We've seen this defense act again really well at times. The first handful of drives for the Grizz, they did a good job until the Grizz started getting the ball in half every single field. San Jose State, a little bit different story. It's a run and shoot. You know they're going to throw the ball for 300 plus yards on every defense, regardless of who it is. So there's definitely some some of that you have to take into account. Like, yeah, Montana's got the best player in the conference. Again, San Jose State was the number 5 FBS passing offense last year. Some of those lumps are going to happen. But I just don't believe yet I think Dennison is doing a great job with as far as scheme and trying to keep things for the most part. Again, Montana got away from him, but has done a pretty good job of keeping at least the ball in front of Idaho and not screwing up too much. But if you're taking the shackles off of Wood and letting him run around a little bit more and letting him, letting the offense get a little more explosive, it also is going to give more possessions to the other team. And I don't necessarily think that's the way to win.
Yeah, that actually, before we go further, I think that is a good point for us to reference some defensive stuff, because I think you and I had implicitly kind of stated an understanding of Idaho's defense that we should make explicit. But before we get there, Dallas, we did
if you are looking for a great all-inclusive week-long vacation, do not look past your backyard. Hughes River Expeditions has been Vandal owned and operated since 1976, and they're ready to take you on the vacation of a lifetime. Enjoy a multi-day trip down the Middle Fork of the Salmon, the main salmon river of no return, the Salmon River Canyons, or the Selway. You can check out special trips like one to see the Perseid meteor shower. Camp on pristine beaches, Brian. Run amazing whitewater, hike scenic trails, spot wildlife, soak in beautiful natural hot springs. And as always, guys, fish the most remote stretches of river in the entire United States. Just bring your clothes and let HRE handle the rest. Grab a paddle, catch dinner, and ride the bull all throughout the Gem State. Call them now at 406-540-4450 or check them out at hughesriver.com.
Okay, I want to come back to the offensive stuff in a second, because you and I don't think you and I are actually that far off. It's different versions of tinkering we're talking about. But you and I have our own interpretation of what tinkering means, in part because of what we have learned about Idaho defensively, which I just have to say, I'm still okay with Idaho. I think Idaho's solid on the ground. I think the Montana game, you look at the first half before before Idaho was worn down from being on the field all the time, getting their ass kicked, doing nothing offensively, surrendering horrific field position for almost all of the Grizz scores. There was a couple drives, but whatever. Good teams are going to have drives. Like that itself is not indicative of did Idaho regress defensively. But you looked at Eli Gilman in the first half looked, minus a run or two, he looked pretty ordinary. Michael Wortham had one rush that mattered. It was a touchdown. It was a big deal. But he had one time where putting the ball in his hands to run the ball mattered for Idaho at all. The second half is where I thought Gilman, who is good, he just wore Idaho down. But that's a long way of saying, so long as the defense isn't on the field all the time, I do feel that Idaho is fine on the ground. And I think that's kind of been consistent through most of the games this season. Mm-hmm. Certainly it's been more persistent than it has not been present on the ground. The twofold problem that I think you and I are saying, hey, this is what we need to do offensively to work around, is one, in spite of what we just said about the rush defense, Idaho's just getting no pressure on quarterbacks. It just does not happen very much. We saw San Jose State, the three-man front might as well have been a zero-man front as far as getting to the quarterback. And, there's a couple times against Montana where they got close to Ayat. He can move. But when I say a couple, I mean a few. It was clearly not bothering Ayat or Montana at all in that game. And most teams would just not say, yeah, Idaho getting the quarterback has caused problems, which leads to the second part. A complementary problem is Idaho's secondary has kind of been abused 4 out of 5 games. I think we can say the jury's in on that part of, and that, hey, we know some guys are going to get better, but hey, we know Aaron Kinsey's injured. No idea when he's coming back. He was a meaningful contributor until guys are dressing on the sideline. You assume they're not. And that's where Kinsey was last week. So I just think it's safe to say it's a combination of personnel. I know that Dennison changes looks. Sometimes that's worked very well. there's the play in the first half saw against Montana where looks like Idaho's going to rush 8, drops a few back, Dylan Lane gets a pass breakup. Like there absolutely are times where that strategy is working. But I also think part of the defensive strategy with the secondary is there isn't a great option with the secondary Idaho has. Some of it's young guys are going to get better. Some of it is Andrew Marshall's not running out there. Tommy McCormick is not running out there. And I think it's a part of it's a personnel issue that the resolution is the season ends and different guys will come in. So, I mean, that doesn't mean that it can't get better, but we're talking minor degree. I think it's pretty clear every single team Idaho is going to see for the rest of the year is going to say, yeah, we think we can beat these guys through the air on third down.
Mm-hmm. And that sucks. It's a really hard thing to game plan around. The handful of sacks that the Vandals do have this year have historically been coming off of blitzes, especially the sack that sealed the Utah Tech game was a 0 blitz. And while that works, don't get me wrong, I love a good Dr. Heat. That's not a long-term plan for success, especially not if your offense isn't putting up 45 points a game, hoping for 0 blitzes to get sacks is just not going to do it. And that's really hard to grasp with this team because the defense has been so good for so many years. And it does feel like just the personnel just is not ready yet. There have been flashes. Matthias McLean has looked really good at times. Zach Krotzer has historically had really good moments, as has Sam Brown, but those guys just haven't popped. Donovan Parham has not popped the way that I think any of us were hoping he would when he was the transfer in to replace Keyshawn James Newby.
No, not at all.
The defensive line just isn't able to get consistent pressure with the 4 of them. So the linebacking core, I think, has been great, and I think is the strength of the defense. But then again, you're starting to sacrifice them as pass rushers, which is only going to weaken your coverage even further. Which again, you're opening up the middle of the field, but what's been open is deep. It's a hard problem to solve, and I wish Court Dennison all the best with it because it has been pretty apparent that the weakness of this team has been throwing the ball through the air. I mean, again, say what you will about San Jose State, like we all know, like I've been saying, number 5 passing offense last year. We knew they were going to throw the ball. It was more concerning that Keali Yacht was able to go have the best game of his career, essentially, against Idaho and dropping dimes into, I wouldn't necessarily say holes, maybe gaps was more the correct term, but I think the jury's in on that one, Brian. 5 games in, the secondary is the weakness of this team, and that's a pretty hard thing to coach around, especially when you don't have an offense that's currently putting up insane numbers of points.
I have one pushback. Are you? I mean, I think right now the battle for relative weakness of this team is a death match between what we just talked about in the secondary and special teams. Now, sometimes special teams is put in a shitty position because, like, hey, when Idaho goes 3 and out deep in their own territory, not to put down to LJ Harm, like he's had moments this season where he looks good. But it's a pretty tall task for any FCS punter to be punting deep out of their own end zone and be told, hey, flip the field. Because if that was what they persistently did, they wouldn't be FCS in the first place. But it's, of course, not just that. The Montana game was an exacerbation of what we've seen. But we all know the field goal struggles, which hopefully Owen Adams fixed. He was 2 for 2 against Montana. It's hard to do better than 2 for 2. But, I mean, Idaho even went to kind of like a couple pooch kickoffs to, after Michael Wortham had a 50-yard return that was not a return for a touchdown. It's the combination of not every team, but some of the teams Idaho's lost against, they have had special teams plays that meaningfully alter the game in their direction. Point to Montana for a fact. They did. And that's normal. Like Montana's typically good special teams. Idaho, for the most part, has been the inverse of minus the WSU games. I remember Harm being pretty good, the WSU game.
Yeah.
But of course we had missed field goal that game too. Minus kind of the WSU game, Idaho's special teams they've had some struggles. I don't know a better way to say that, but to take care of both of those issues, we want to not rely on even though Adams did hit us too. I don't think anyone wants to rely on the 3rd string kicker who is now the starter as the guy who's going to win you a game to get into the playoffs, or who's going to win a playoff game, or beat a UC Davis team. We want to rely on his leg. I don't think this team wants to do that. And I mean, honestly, I think the answer to both of the special teams issues and the defensive issues we talked about are, I don't know how much they solve themselves. I think you play around those and just understand, okay, something like football is complementary. Teams that win do complementary things. What can Idaho do to protect its weaknesses? And to me, I don't think the secondary fixes itself. I don't think the special teams completely fixes itself. I think the fix is Idaho's essentially going to have to play defense with offense in some sort of way. And I'll throw it back to you. That's part of why I led the show talking offensively.
Yeah. And again, Brian, you and I are just talking about two different interpretations of the same point. I think of playing defense with your offense as in, and this pains me because I love the air raid more than just about anything in the world, including my wife. Run the damn ball and kill the clock. And that's how you make your defense look better is, well, they only had to go out there for 10 possessions because Idaho held the ball for 40 minutes. Again, really hard to do that when you're talking your third string running back who has his career health bar is certainly closer to the end than it is to the start. And then Hayden Kinchlow, who doesn't seem to be trusted to do much more than the 2 yards goal line type of carry. Carlos Matheny, who doesn't seem to have a ton of trust in the coaching staff, and Mark McKinnon, who we haven't seen. And at this point, if we haven't seen him, I'm assuming there's a reason for that. It is very difficult. As Tubbs of the Club says in the comment section, his body is all red in College Football 26 video game. It's the wear and tear on Nate Thomas is really not able to be tracked. Boner Ferry jumping in. I'm worried about us against good teams. Saturday was depressing. Again, yes, it was. I would also point out, just as a little bit of Xanax for everybody, guys, Idaho's 2-3. Yes, that sucks. Idaho got paid to lose 2 of those games. Unfortunately, lost them with such little margin that it could have easily been a victory in either or both of those. And then unfortunately traveled to the rival who historically has gotten up for that game significantly better than we have since we dropped back to the Big Sky. Yeah, Jason Eck got him in 2022. But outside of that, they have ripped open our asshole every single year.
It was the second biggest crowd in the history of Wagra's Field for that game.
Yeah. And hey, credit to them. They treat this like a rivalry. And I wish our fans did a little bit better job of that when they come into the dome.
I mean, they sold out the last time they did.
Yes, but again, also sold out with a pretty loud Montana crowd in one corner of the end zone.
Yeah.
But yes, the dome was sold out. Sure. I will give the Vandals that. But guys, those are the 3 hardest teams Idaho's going to see. I'm not saying NAU, UC Davis, and Sac State are going to be pushovers. Far from it. But Idaho is through the meat of the schedule. And yes, we all had some serious high praise, thought we'd be at 4-1 at this point. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, but you take out all of our, again, misgivings and misdirections, thinking this team was going to be really like a top 5 team in the FCS. Okay, well, they're not that, but at this point, even a team that could end up in the semifinals, going 2-3 against this right now is not necessarily the craziest thing. So there is at least a little bit of shine away for that doom and gloom. Idaho is going to play a bunch of shittier teams. And Brian, like you said, Northern Colorado, Eastern Washington, Portland State. That's a pretty great 3 set of games to actually figure some of this stuff out. So that way, come Northern Arizona on Halloween night, again, another late night ESPN2 game, Idaho can hopefully have a little bit better game plan to go in there and win on the road than they did last weekend.
Yeah, I've got my own version of Xanax I think we should look at too. Before that, dude, we got to talk about vandalgear.com. Absolutely, dude. When I was recording the Big Sky like power ranking show, it's not a power ranking show. I even saw there's a new Kibby Dome shirt that has the old school like graphics on the side. That's the electrical, like the electronic score for the fight song, which you can get absolutely nowhere else. Vandalgear.com has, to me, the best Vandal shirts you can get anywhere. They're priced very, very favorably compared to, I don't know, home field, where, Jesus Christ, like $50 for each shirt at home field. Yeah, no, I can get 2 vandalgear.com shirts for every 1 home field shirt. I'm doing that every time. The company's Specific Custom Sportswear, Vandal owned and operated for over 25 years. Not only do they take care of Vandal stuff, but hey, if you're a business, you're an org, you're a school, and you want to do shirts as a fundraiser, you want to do shirts just for the hell of it, you want to do sweatshirts, you want to do hoodies, stuff like that, Jeff can help you take care of that. He can use your own logo. He can help you design a logo. But either way, get a hold of Jeff at Pacific Custom Sportswear or go to vandalgear.com.
In the comment section, Crewhead76, we better beat the hell out of the bad teams and not play down to them. That is a big concern. Captain 58, I mean, I'd feel a lot better about 3-2. 2 losses could push us off the bubble. Absolutely. You guys both are raising very good points here. Because again, the shitty thing here that Idaho unfortunately has bought themselves is no real margin for error. Yeah, you could win the next 7 games and you're going to be looking great at 9-3. You lose one again. Let's say it's UC Davis, because that just seems to always happen. Okay, you're 8-4. Hey, with the victories you've got and the close loss on the road to Missoula and the hopefully not awful loss to UC Davis, 8 wins in the Big Sky, top 4 in the Big Sky, you pretty confident about getting into the playoffs. 7-5, let's say you drop 1 to Sac State or NAU.
You need some help.
Then you're
7-5.
You're just really hoping that you're going to get again that road game that, let's say we do end up in Missoula in the first round and hope that it goes different that time. That's kind of where things are at, and that sucks. If this team was 4-1, then yeah, you could drop that game to NAU and that game to UC Davis, and it would be, oh, hey, we'll be fine. But that margin for error is just gone.
I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but Idaho State's strength is passing the ball too, and we just talked about that matchup. So like, look, the Xanax I was talking about a second ago, glad I went the opposite direction there. The Xanax I was talking about a couple seconds ago is, first, it's important to not obsess over like a single game result when we do have 5 games worth of evidence. And I do think you could say there was something about the intersection of the Montana pressure and the crowd itself, maybe, that made Joshua Wood for 2.5 quarters look much worse than he looked against San Jose State, where Wood was effective at, he extended multiple drives on 4th down with, intermediate down across the middle throws, the type that we wanted to see more against Montana, and the type that head coach Thomas Ford said, hey, the Montana pressure plus some of the way the Montana DBs were playing very tight on those intermediate throws. Ford said that kind of took those throws away, but also Dallas, I mean, you've watched some of the replay and you kind of agree with the assessment of like, okay, that wasn't nothing, but Wood also missed some guys in a way that he wasn't missing them against San Jose State. He wasn't missing them against St. Thomas. He wasn't really missing them against Utah Tech either. So the first thing is, if we just have a Joshua Wood like we had against San Jose State, there's not that many teams I'm super worried about. I know the tone of this has been kind of low on Idaho. We're not low. This is just a recalibration. And like the thing, it's clear that if Idaho is going to be around what we hope that they truly are, they're going to have to get better at a couple of things. But Idaho could do nothing to change right now. And in a month, they should be sitting at 5-3 heading into that NAU game, maintaining that ranking at right around 10-ish. That's not nothing. So one, Idaho's got that. And just 2, never mind the 3 teams I just talked about. NAU's not going to put pressure on Joshua Wood the way Montana did. UC Davis just lost their best defensive player using him as a running back.
What a fucking stupid move.
Incredibly stupid, which is wild because like Tim Plow is not a dumb guy.
Well, jury might not be out on that one, Brian.
Yeah, rephrased. Heading into this, there was no reason to believe Tim Plow was a dumb guy. He went to Davis. He's been a good coach there. But Rex Connors has a knee injury serious enough that after the game, Tim Plow said, yeah, pray for Rex. That's reassuring, guys. So just bring that up. I don't know if UC Davis is going to be able to put pressure on Joshua Wood the way Montana did. And Davis is probably the best defense Idaho's got left on their schedule. So just keep that in mind. Idaho has had a top heavy schedule. Now, they got to win games. I think they got to buy themselves margin for error. And Idaho is not, problem free does not have no problems to resolve. But other teams are going to have that too. Sacramento State is completely lost at quarterback. Northern Colorado can't score whatsoever, and their quarterback's not that good, and their coach doesn't want to throw, but they have to. Portland State is Portland State. Eastern looks like a catastrophe.
Eastern is Eastern.
Northern Arizona cannot guard anyone. And they're like, people are going to lose guys. So just keep in mind, we don't cover every team to level we cover Idaho, but if every single team who is not Montana or Montana State right now, if their bye week was today, they should have, the talk would be something like this. So just keep that in mind. Everyone's there. And I guess the other thing to me to bring up for Idaho is it's tinkering. It's tinkering that we're looking at. We covered the things we don't think are going to change. Thomas Ward might think nothing really needs to change, that naturally as Joshua Wood plays more football, he's just going to essentially convert more of what I'm talking about. Because Joshua Wood, in spite of how confident we are, and in spite of how we've seen him be electric and how the Montana fans are certainly going to try to get him to come there next year, Wood has been a starter for 5 games this year. There will be internal growth. That truly may be the math of hey, well, he's just going to get better as the season goes. Some of the stuff he missed against Montana, he's just going to miss it less, guys. And we've watched him look more dialed in, which was actually why I was confusing in the Montana game to see so many deep down the sideline throws, because that just hadn't really been the go-to pass for Joshua Wood. So maybe the actual takeaway is, yeah, that was just kind of weird response to Montana pressure, and don't expect that to come back. And then suddenly we are doing a little bit of what I just said I want to see. We're letting Wood throw easier, get some easier connections. We're back to relying on the run game, similar to how we've been anticipating. And the actual change for Idaho is just internal development and getting through the roughest part of the season. Dallas, I'll throw back to you because I talked for a while. But I guess that's one of the things I do want to stress. When you lose to Montana like that, the entire national landscape and deluge of information you get it's always like, hey, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck, you suck. That's only because of the energy behind Montana. If you take a step back, Idaho has some problems they're not going to fix, like every team. But Idaho has some relative strengths that if they're just baby steps better, even getting their ass kicked against Montana, that is an imminently winnable game. That is not a bad place to be. It's scary because of the margin for error, but it's absolutely not, to me, it's not a reason to be thrown in the towel in Idaho, or it's not a reason to be shitting yourself during the game, beyond the fact that, hey, that can be what makes it fun. You're just aware of that. There's a difference between that and spiraling. So yeah, Dallas, throw it back to you. Let you take it wherever you want.
So just a couple of things to hit here. Crewhead 76, our O-line held up fine against Montana's pressure. I believe they had 1 sack. There's Crewhead. What did they have? 1 sack. I believe they had 1 sack on Wood the whole game. Now he also had to roll out of the pocket a couple times because they were able to get pressure, but also it's a 3-3-5 that they're just throwing the kitchen sink at you sometimes. It just kind of happens. And David in the comment section, man, the starting field position killed Idaho. Being there was a wake up call as far as the fan base. I don't know if wake up call is maybe the right terminology that I would use, but that starting field position did kill Idaho. For me, Brian, the thing that I want to see in the next 3 games and over this bye week, the last few games, I feel like the coaching staff has done a really bad job at game day football. You go back to Utah Tech, and oh man, absolute what I call a disaster class. You get down to the 7-yard line and you throw the ball 3 straight times. You have a timeout. You threw the ball 3 straight times, kicked a field goal, let Utah Tech get the ball back, and they went 38 yards in 2 plays and kicked a field goal because they have a field goal kicker that they can trust from 55 yards. That was a fuck up. You have the ball. You are first and goal from the 7. You have 1 timeout. You do not let that team get the ball back. 3 straight throws. You gave the ball back to Utah Tech. They kicked a field goal. It didn't mean shit because, yes, they won 20-6. it didn't matter in the long run. But
You're
that's an
explaining why
issue.
that game was closer than it needed to be, for longer than it needed to be.
Exactly. But then you come back to Montana here, and they did the same exact thing against Montana. Yes, Montana has a 2-touchdown lead at the end of that game, or excuse me, at the end of the half. But Idaho is getting Wood out of the pocket and moving a little bit. And yes, you got bailed out by the defensive pass interference that had the unsportsmanlike tacked on it. Yes, that absolutely helped. That was huge. It kept the drive moving. But then you get into their territory, and instead of playing the clock because there's 3 minutes left and they're not calling their timeouts, and you should be, again, milking the shit out of this clock because you have proven this is how you win football games, you start chucking the deep fade into the end zone, you kick a surrender field goal and give Montana the ball back with 2 minutes left. Now, thankfully, Montana didn't score, but it's shit like that will keep a team like Northern Colorado in for too long. And that's my last remaining concern I didn't want to talk about, Brian. What the hell is going to happen if the coaches don't figure some of that shit out and prevent, again, like Corvette 76, prevent some of those teams beneath us to playing up or us playing down? You gotta figure that shit out, man. You learn that stuff from video games. Like, you guys have been around football a long time. You're all professional coaches. Figure that the fuck out.
Yeah, I think what you're saying is part of what I've said in a different way. Of one of the things that I really liked that the staff, the ex-staff did with Giovanni McCoy is he didn't really have cute shit in Arsenal. McCoy wasn't throwing screen passes, and he wasn't throwing a ton of fades. I feel like you and I have both kind of hit this pretty hard. I just think that there's a lot of things this Idaho team does well. Fades to the sideline, fades to the corner. Not one of them. Like, what are we capitalizing on that? Like 1%. And hey, you can tell me there's a penalty that should have been called against Montana, and I will believe you. But I will also just say, Dallas, you also talk about how penalties helped Idaho as well. So, like, whatever, guys. Like, I think it's a waste of time bitching about refs. Like, they are who they are. Like, you control. All coaches are going to say, hey, like, control what you can control. So that, look, that's those two things are the things I kind of hope would just go away.
Outside of made field goals in the Kibbe Dome that just apparently get ruled not field goals. Outside of that, that's okay to bitch about, but for the most part, Brian, I agree that like, for the most part, officials are blowing calls on both ends. It's not the worst thing. It
happens, but I just think those fades are wasted plays. We're capitalizing on, like, again, 9% might be generous, and there's just a lot of things Idaho does pretty well that they do capitalize a decent amount on, and that's hey, maybe what you say here is, with how new some of the play callers are, there's some things to work through. Now, the evidence of working through that is some things replace the things we're talking about at some point. We're going to see if that happens, but I feel like you are absolutely dead on with what you're talking about there. The self-inflicted gunshot wounds have to leave for Idaho. We've seen the penalties get better. Tackling's I just think it needs to look closer to the first few weeks a little bit more often. I've covered how I feel about the Montana game with, like, the run defense, but like I said, self-inflicted gunshot wounds can be, you have some great play calling that gets you to the 20, and then suddenly looks like you're chasing touchdowns instead of, like, continuing to do what works. That absolutely is on the table. Something Idaho needs to look at with the additional component of, I do think this team needs to prioritize not kicking field goals, unless they're chip shots. But no matter what, right now, this doesn't matter if you're talking about your fix, like you brought, or you're talking about my fix of, like, hey, I would like to see the focus be a little bit more Josh Wood, make things easy. That the result has to get touchdowns. That's part of what can buy Idaho some more margin for error, is just not having to kick those field goals and settle for 3 when you have a secondary that you just know the other team for the rest of the season, guys, the other team is going to try to exploit the secondary. If we don't, call it an easy W for Idaho.
Yeah, fully agree on that, Brian. Guys, we are over 50 minutes into this show. Marten, Brian, and I guess Dallas, myself, any final thoughts on the Vandals and, again, the highs, the lows, and the unrealized potential of this team before Brian talks us into our favorite beverage and we close the show with Around the Bar?
My one thing is I still think Idaho's a playoff team, but I am going to talk about Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey because it's right in front of me. Snake River Stampede Canadian Whiskey, guys, show sponsor. That's who presents the show. Look, one of the best whiskey options in Idaho. Brain dead thing to try if you haven't. If you haven't tried Snake River yet, I don't know what's wrong with you. Two options: Snake River Stampede entry level or your Snake River small batch 1915. That's kind of their upper shelf whiskey. Both have double barrel finishes. Both are 3-grain whiskeys. Each has its own strength that I really think the extra finish is what makes it shine through. So like your Stampede finished in Oloroso sherry casks, your 1915 aged an extra 2 years and finished in ex-Canadian rye whiskey casks. Both are full-bodied flavor. They both have 3 to 4 different flavor notes you're going to cycle through if you're the type of person pays attention to that. But either way, they're fantastic economic buys too. 26 for the Stampede, 39 for the 1915. If you haven't tried one, get yourself to an Idaho State liquor store. Grab yourself a Snake River today.
What Brian is saying is that the $26 bottle works really well when you need to forget a really bad night on ESPN2.
It does. What I was getting at before I remember Snake River is, one, I do think this is a playoff team. And I do think this is a team that can make noise. But I think the smartest thing to do as a Vandal fan is forget that right now. Look at each next game. Because I think if you do that, you're going to get through the month of October feeling like heading into that next marquee matchup, this team has a very good chance of trending up. But it's got to be week by week, improvement by improvement. That's how this team, I think, is able to iron out some of the things we've talked exhaustively on this show about.
One final comment from Jason Mayer. Remember, we replaced the coaching staff and lost many of our best players to the portal. While we're not at the same level as when Eck left, I don't think we fell behind as much as we should have. Fully co-signed on that, Jason. Again, I know everybody loses players. Montana lost a bunch of guys. They got to keep a handful of their stars and really replaced like their entire defense. When you look at Idaho replaced virtually the entire coaching staff and a good portion of the 2 deep at every single position. The offensive line really kept continuity, as did the tight end room, just based on Jake Cox coming back to health. Outside of that, the running backs, obviously, we know are not the most healthy of guys. Otherwise, every other position group looks vastly different than it did last year. And this is still a team that, again, I think we all have a pretty big belief in. Crewhead 76 in the comments. I'm still in on these boys always. I've seen worse and played on worse Idaho teams. And that is something to keep in mind. We've watched a lot more teams a lot worse than this. And I think it's frustrating in the moment when we see how close this team really is to being on a 4-1 record. And we're all smoking cigars here on the bye week talking about how, wow, I just hope that we don't see North Dakota State until the championship. Unfortunately, doesn't look like that's in the cards this year. But this team still does have enough to be a playoff team, as long as they don't shoot themselves in the foot too many times. But gentlemen, I think that does it for our final thoughts. Let's get into picking the Big Sky. Marten, you've been on the shelf. Any final thoughts about Idaho before we jump into Davis Cal Poly?
I just want to say the sky's not falling. There's still like 7 games left in this season, regular season, I should add. Breathe, take it 1 game at a time.
And hopefully that's what the Vandals are doing, because if they get caught looking ahead to that Northern Arizona game, again, Brian and I can say shit like the next 3 games. Wow. Couldn't be more happy to see Northern Colorado, Eastern Washington, and Portland State. But if that's the attitude that the players take, that's probably not great. Xander Eccles, current Vandal long snapper. Thanks for continuing to support us, guys. Man, always, Xander. We are fans of the team first and foremost. And unfortunately, I mean, sometimes when things are going shitty, we got to talk about them as they're going shitty. But hey, hopefully this is the dark before the dawn. But gentlemen, we got 4 games to pick this week. Davis at Cal Poly.
I'm going to go UC Davis.
I don't know what video is being played in the background, Martin, but we might want to mute that. Yeah.
It's not porn, I promise.
Not yet.
All right, Ted Cruz.
Davis, Cal Poly. Cal Poly kind of shocked the world last week, beating Sac State, which I do believe is a little bit more of an indictment of Sac State than it is Cal Poly as a team to pay attention to. However, the Mustangs, they're 3-2. Yeah, they have a garbage D2 win, and I don't know, San Diego wins looking better and better each week. But I'm going to go with UC Davis. I just think there's no reason to think that Davis is going to throw 3 picks to keep Cal Poly in the game. We already brought this up, but wild that the best defensive player in the Big Sky might be out for the year because the coach put him in as a running back in a goal line type situation, I believe. Catastrophically stupid decision. So Davis, look, they're going to lose the best safety in the entire Big Sky. So obviously, you're expecting their defense is going to take a little bit of a hit, but I don't think that matters against a team like Cal Poly. So Davis.
Yeah, I'm going to go Davis as well. As much as I'd love to jump on the Cal Poly bandwagon, which, hey, Travis Thompson and Tom Kendall both jumping in to say Cal Poly. Crewhead 76, hungry like Paul Wolf. Love that one. Just truly outstanding work on that one, Crewhead. Love that. As again, somebody that has been pretty heavy on the, hey, I think Sac State, I think their coach knows what the hell he's doing. Unfortunately, their quarterback situation is absolute dog shit.
Completely lost.
Between Cardell Williams and Jaden Rashada, they went 11 for 30 against Cal Poly. 1 touchdown, 3 picks.
11 completions to their team, 3 completions to the other team.
Like that was horrid, absolute horrid quarterback play. Like Brian, myself, and Martin would have made a better triple-headed quarterback monster than whatever shit they're trotting out there. That team is going to be, their ceiling is so low because their quarterback play can be anywhere between good-ish to holy fucking Mason Petrino. And unfortunately, I think that's really all that Cal Poly got to benefit from was just some of the worst quarterback play that I've seen in a very long time. Give me Davis. As much as I hate to say it, I'd love to see Davis start falling down the ladder, but give me Davis over Poly. Guys, we're going to jump forward to another really interesting game. Montana at ISU.
Dallas already knows where I'm going to go with this, so I'm going to keep it simple and short and sweet, and I'm going to go ISU.
So obviously going Montana, I would not be shocked if there's a little bit of a letdown from Montana this week. I don't think Idaho State's going to be able to capitalize on that. If you saw how the Bengals the Bengals were shut out in the second half against Northern Colorado. I don't think the Bengals are going to be good enough. Bengals have a super rough next 3 games. So they're going to be, and if you're reeling as a Vandal, ISU is going to be absolutely like throwing in the towel pretty quick. Mm-hmm. But I think the Grizz are as hot as any team in the nation right now. They are scoring the ball and looking like their secondary is vulnerable, and Idaho State may be able to exploit that, but they're going to have to connect a lot. Jordan Cook started against Northern Colorado. He was not that good. He was like 10 of 29. 12 of 33 for a touchdown. Davis Harsin came in the second half, and I believe that's what Idaho State's going to do from now on is Davis Harsin will get some run. He was 2 of 7 through the air. He's a rushing threat, but that's 14 for 41 passing overall against UNC. Like that's not going to do it against Montana. And so no, Montana's going to win that game. Wouldn't be shocked if it's a little bit closer than you expect, mostly from a Montana letdown. But no, dude, it's hard to pick against the Grizz playing anyone right now. And did Idaho State? I watched a lot of Idaho State, Northern Colorado, because that's the lunatic I am. Idaho State did not look very good against a team that can't move the ball. So,
yeah, that was that ISU NoCo game was a whole lot of fun if you like hating yourself. Yeah, guys, Travis Thompson says it best in the comment section. Montana never gets up for ISU, but they still win. I think it's in Pocatello, first road game of the year for them. They're going to sleepwalk into it and probably still win by 17 points. Unfortunately, I just don't see it. Davis Harsin, to his credit, looked really good against Lincoln, which is not not NCAA, not NAIA, not
Brian could look good against
NJCAA.
Lincoln.
Exactly. But I don't think he's going to put up his. I pulled up his numbers because I wanted to make sure I got them right. 10 for 13, 195 yards, 6 touchdowns. I don't think he's going to be doing that against the Grizz secondary. Yeah, give me the Grizz all day. Captain 58 saying 56-40 Grizz. I don't know that ISU is going to put up 40, but I would like to see that. It would make me feel a little bit more confident that Idaho could get him back in the playoffs at the end of the year. Guys, this one actually is a year ago. This one wouldn't have been interesting at all, but this year, this might actually be a little bit interesting. Montana State at Northern Arizona.
I wanted to pick. I so badly want to pick NAU, but I'm still going to go Montana State.
I am definitely going to go Montana State, largely because NAU cannot stop anyone against, by the way, Montana State against Eastern, who is not good. But they've played a few close games against not very good teams, but still, Eastern has had some moments. They look maybe kind of sort of almost respectable. Montana State looked more like the team we thought we'd see, winning 57-0. Quarterback Justin Lamson's completing 73% of his passes on the year. The NAU secondary is not going to make his life miserable. Still going to be curious about what if Montana State can look as good on the ground against other teams as they did against Eastern, because that was easily the best we've seen the Bobcats on the ground the entire year. And it's not remotely close. So it's like a month sample size against both very good and not very good teams at all of on the ground looking okay. Against Eastern, it was different. So that's, I guess, the thing to pay attention to as far as how could this, what does this mean for Montana State? But I just don't think NAU is going to be able to stop them nearly enough. They're going to have to be essentially flawless offensively. And Ty Pennington's good, probably best pure passer in the Big Sky, but this is an NAU team that needed some heroics to beat Southern Utah 52-49. Southern Utah is no Montana State, man.
Yeah, no. In the comment section, Tom Kendall, Cats. Ron Lowney, our favorite Bobcat. Cats by 21. I'm betting this game. Crew had 76. NAU just to piss off Ron. Travis Thompson, Cats 40-21. Tom Kendall, NAU will give him a game. Captain 58, 41-20. Cats have had hiccups in Flagstaff before. This is the first real road game for the Bobcats this year. Yes, you go to Oregon and that's a road game, but unless you're the Idaho Vandals, you go into Austin Stadium expecting to just have your head knocked off and hope that you can reattach it the next week. After that, it's been all Bozeman from there on. So first true road game where you go in without the mentality of, hey, let's just not die here. With that said, I don't think that the NAU is anywhere near good enough to put a real scare in MSU. I don't think they're going to run them straight through, but screw it, 76. NAU doesn't have the D to hang with kiddies, just like you're saying, Brian. They can't stop Mini. I don't think they're going to stop Lamson. I don't think they're going to stop this ground game.
I guess the other thing that I'm looking at too is the MSU has allowed 10 points over the last 12 quarters. Mm-hmm. Now, was it against world beaters? No. There's San Diego, Mercyhurst, and Eastern, but those are all FCS teams. It is incredibly difficult to hold any crew of FCS teams to that few points over 3 games without at least being pretty damn good. NAU is a different level of test than those 3 teams. But like, if you had to blindly pick which defensive unit looks the best in the Big Sky, you would be a moron to not pick Montana State right now. So I guess that's the other thing that we're going to look and see. Hey, how does that defensive unit look against a top 15-ish opponent?
Mm-hmm. Guys, that takes us to the game of the week. Marten's magical. I was trying to think of some other M. I don't know. Mercy killing is really what this is going to be. Top 5 Portland State at bottom 2 Eastern Washington, and that's bottom 2 in the FCS, not in the Big Sky.
For those that don't know, I'm treating this game like I want to say it was last. It was I think it was this. No, it was last. It was 2024 where I watched Adams State take on Western Colorado. That is this level of sicko game. Oh. Dallas and Brian, by the way, I did that on my birthday because I am a sicko. I am going to go Portland State Vikings, baby.
I have no idea how anyone could pick Portland State after last week's offensive eruption against Northern Arizona, where the Vikings put up 17. They have now notched 40 total points on the year to average 8 points per game. Eastern has been able to move the ball some against other teams. So Portland State's terrible. They can't score. They can't defend. Eastern absolutely has to pick up some wins this year. This is a same way that UNC was a must win for ISU. This is a must win for Eastern. Also, the Eagles have 2 quarterbacks they're trotting out, now trying to figure out what to do with their quarterbacks. The initial starter, Jared Taylor, missed a couple games with a bad neck injury. He's back. Went 5-12 against MSU. No quarterback for Eastern looks good against MSU, but sorting out what to do with Jared Taylor and Nate Bell is kind of the thing for Eastern to do. But I don't think it matters which guy they go with against Portland State. Portland State's terrible, so Eastern.
I mean, I wish I could be on Barney Ball with Marten here. I'm gonna give it to Eastern simply because it's in Cheney. I thought about it, Marten. This to me is 2 coaches that have completely lost their programs, just circling the drain. This game doesn't matter. Honestly, if they just chose not to show up for this game, I think, well, Marten, you'd get a refund, as would probably like 24 other people.
Maybe
and then
Patty, even though I think he works for the department now.
See, exactly. Know. Like he can't get refunded because he's an employee. So I'm gonna go with Eastern only because I think Eastern has at least a little bit more talent there. I also think Aaron Best has at least a little bit of that, like, fuck it, we'll throw the kitchen sink at him this game, and hey, maybe we'll trot out both quarterbacks every single play, and one's going to be the running back, one's the quarterback, and you don't know until the center snaps it to whichever one they're standing next to each other. Like, we could get real fucking weird here with Aaron Best and that team, and that's more than I can say about Portland State, which is just continuing to trot out.
Dallas, we can do? We can start momentum if we really want to.
I mean, Bo Baldwin is unemployed right now. If you're looking at bringing somebody back to try to save that program, I mean, who else is going to go coach at Eastern? Because I don't want them to be D3, but man, if your football program continues on like this, woof. San Jose State will count the attendance at Eastern, 16,500. Bravo, Jason. Bravo. Tom Kindle in the comments. I do like both Best and Barnum. I do like those guys. Aaron Best was always good to me when I was in TV. Remembered my name, which was always a big thing. Guys like Mark Few certainly didn't care to, and I couldn't blame him for that. But it was always a nice thing when a position coach had, he wasn't even the head coach.
Well, hey, to be fair, Mark Few has a couple things that makes him forget other things. So
that is true. It does like to kick back a couple brewskis. Unfortunately, he's not doing any Snake River, but if he was doing Snake River, he probably would have killed somebody in that DUI incident. Fuck Mark Few. Anyways, gentlemen, we have gotten through everything that we had on the docket. Any final thoughts as the Vandals go into their bye week hoping for a victory?
No, other than I think, look, hey, I've read different takeaways online, not to pat ourselves in the back, but I think this was clearly the most thorough, run through of Idaho, covering it for 2 episodes. So I'll pat myself on the back for that, which is to say patreon.com/Tubs at the Club, support the show, join the Discord for the game thread, which goes wire to wire in good ways and not. But if you can't go to a game, it's the best way to actually be with other Vandals online. So yeah, support the show. Costs as little as a cup of coffee a month. Patreon.com/Tubs at the Club.
With that said, gentlemen, we'll see you guys next week. Again, no instant reaction show this weekend because we're not going to instantly react to the bye week. So we'll be back at our normal time Thursday, not Thursday the 2nd, but Thursday the 9th. We will be back previewing Idaho, Northern Colorado for homecoming, and hopefully a get-right game for the Vandals.
And I'll be on Sunday.
Thank you, Brian. I should have pitched that. We are now in conference weeks, and I forget to pitch that. So, Brian, would you like to tell the people about your Sunday night show?
Sunday night show, I covered the entire conference. Usually I do power rankings, but I'm kind of sick of sending the link out. And halfway through the season, no one gives a shit about actual rankings anyway. So I've just started talking about tiers and talking about interesting Big Sky stories. I do that Sunday night, usually between 9 and 10, something like that. I don't have an exact time. I show up when I can show up, and we go when we go. But it'll be happening this Sunday again.
Late night Brian, pants off, dance off, guys. Be there or be
Hashtag Midnight Marceau.
There we go. Midnight Marceau. Ooh, I like that. With that said, gentlemen,
go Vandals. Go Vandals.
Go Vikings and go Vandals.
Jesus Christ.
Go Vandals.